So, welcome. I'm going to try to be as unobtrusive as I can. I don't think I'm going to have to stir up questions, as people already have their hands up. What I would like to do at the beginning, though, is to give preference to a couple of groups, and those are students that are here and practitioners who work in this area that are here.
Okay, so how do you get these high-density grazing projects started, and how much of an investment is it?
It just begin, okay, and it's very little investment normally. It makes money rather than costing money, and we actually did an international trial on that. Ran for 8 years, an international trial, because I said land resources are capital. You don't need capital, and we generated the capital. I could not put any money in there unless I generated from the land. That university monitored the economics, and it beat a government control scheme next to it. So that started long ago. Mostly we need the money just for education and training, just to give the people the knowledge, and then in many situations, because of the desertification, we often find we need some money for bulk water supplies to get the animals started.
In the black hat, did you have a question?
I'm not a student, though.
I'm going to go back and forth, okay? And we're going to use the microphone.
Thank you. Do you have a demonstration project in the United States underway?
The 40 million acres, many of those are in America, and we have a grassland division partnering with the Capital Institute in New York, John Fullerton, where we're actually showing investors that they can invest in young people, livestock, land, get a true triple bottom line return, and we have a whole grassland division doing that. So yes, there are sites. The one thing we do not do is ever demonstrate. We learned that the hard way. If I demonstrate something here, okay, what I'm psychologically doing, although it is my intent, is I'm demonstrating how clever I am and how stupid you are. It's counterproductive. So we have learning sites where the boundaries are soft psychologically. We're all learning together because we don't have answers. We just have a way forward now, which is exciting. I am learning every day on our site in Africa. So it's a learning site, and everybody comes there to learn, nobody to demonstrate how clever they are.
Yeah, I would.
So this summer I was in Ethiopia looking at a project that's trying to address climate change and drought, and they're trying to address the land degradation, a lot of it caused by overgrazing in that country. And I'm just wondering whether the methods that you're promoting are appropriate for areas that have such high density, population densities of people, where families have on average less than a quarter hectare of land. Or whether methods such as the project was promoting that are like cut and feed practices are more appropriate under those conditions.
I didn't go through it all. I will in the policy session, all right? We use a holistic framework for the decision making, and I can just tell you it's appropriate for every situation. You don't even have to have land to make decisions holistically in people's lives. And Ethiopia is not desertifying because of overgrazing. It's desertifying because of overrest, as you've just learnt, and it's totally appropriate for them. We are actually beginning to train people from southern Ethiopia.
In the sweater, right here.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you. I'm wondering if you've come across land care as a movement. It's prevalent. It's out of Australia originally, but it's prevalent in Eastern and Southern Africa now, and it seems like an ideal sort of confluence of well-meaning people's concerned about the land and concerned about people's welfare. It's a triple bottom line approach. If you have, I'd like to hear it. If not, I can make the connection.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with land care. In fact, the people that put it together visited me in New Mexico because they came here for ideas, and they were looking at mainstream thinking, and I put them in my plane and flew them over thousands and thousands of acres of failed reseeding, failed soil, water harvesting, etc. And I said, don't come here for answers with that. What you need to do is look at the stuff we're talking of today, and they are beginning to do so. We have many practitioners in Australia. In fact, when my wife and I went for a book signing, we were met by 300 ranch families from all over Australia except Tasmania, every state. And what I liked most about that wasn't the tremendous success stories on the land, overcoming the drought, surviving the drought, etc. What I liked most was the number of them that came up and just shook my hand and said, "Thank you." And I said, "What for?" And they said, "You saved our family." That to me was the most pleasing part of it.
In the back right there. Yeah.
But, so I had a question regarding possibilities of applying this type of education, this Savory Center in a place like Haiti, where not only has the land been completely deforested, but the soil, there's nothing really growing there, and there's a huge opportunity for, you know, jobs and creation. And is it been considered as a site?
We haven't made any, we don't have any connections in Haiti, but it's global, please believe me, and Haiti desperately needs us. Until the Haitians are formulating policies that are achievable, address the problem, etc., there's no hope. And here is a way to do it. So we just need somebody in Haiti to respond, and then we can. But we haven't made a connection, same as China. This China desperately needs us, but we've not been able to make any connection yet to China.
Okay. I'm going to kind of move this way so that we can move the microphone in an orderly way. So how about right here in the gray sweater?
People have talked about the problem of a lot of livestock producing a lot of methane. It sounds like from what you're saying that the approach you're advocating would deal with that in terms of methane sequestration. Could you speak to that further?
Yeah, the methane one, actually, in my view, is a highly academic one. Because when you've got that mass of grass, all right, something's got to break it down biologically. You've got that point. You can't have it oxidized, you can't have it burn. Those puts the pollution up there, desertification. Now, if you were somehow to leave it to break down with microorganisms, what would they produce? Methane. Anything that breaks down lignin is going to produce methane. So the cow is doing it because of in the gut, the buffalo did it, the bison do it, etc. So you're going to get methane whatever you do if you break down lignin, and you've got to break it down. All right, so let's assume that cows put out 10 times the methane that they do. They do put out methane, they can't help it, because they're digesting, the microorganisms are digesting lignin. If they put out 10 times the methane, you still have no tool with which to address the carbon issue except livestock. So you have no option, even if they put out 10 times. The area we know the least about, in my mind, is how that methane breaks down in the soil. Australians are doing some good work on it, and the evidence seems to be increasing, and I hope a lot more work will be done, that the biological activity in a living, active soil breaks the methane down much more rapidly than we understood. So I think as we get healthier soils, we'll see more breakdown of methane there. But I repeat, even if our livestock produce 10 times the methane, you have no option. You get that?
Great.
There is no option.
Great. Can I get someone right here, right in this area, in the green shirt? Thanks.
Could you talk about the potential for carbon mitigation? You said this helps address global warming and climate change, but can you quantify that somehow? Tell us what is the potential and why isn't it being considered as one of the techniques for mitigation by, by UN, for instance?
What do you mean by carbon mitigation?
Well, you say that it'll take some carbon. What I'm trying to get a sense is what is the scale, the potential of doing this? How much carbon can be sequestered in the soil by doing this technique?
I deliberately didn't give you any figures. The reason why, let me explain it to you, is because it's so hazy and so many scientists, in my mind, are arguing about the techniques of measuring how much carbon can you be put in the soil. Well, what soil? I mean, you've got so many different soils. What depth are you talking? What amount of organic matter in them, etc. And I find when you start bouncing figures around, people then start arguing about that, and that takes them off the point. is that you have no option, whatever the amount. Like I said with methane, you have no option. If you're going to get that carbon down, whatever amount, the only thing that we can do it with is livestock. So I don't get into a discussion, but you've got people here who can give you figures and bounce figures and so on. I just don't get into it because I've experienced it, that people then get arguing the figure and miss what I'm saying about be real. Be real. At the end of the day, you've got to bring it down, whatever the amounts, whatever amounts. But the soil scientists that I work with and talk to are very optimistic that the entire legacy load can be brought down.
You talked a lot about unintended consequences, and I would like to hear more. So methane could be one, but we've talked about that. How about livestock productivity? How about labor costs for people that now have to work this more complicated system? How about these kinds of changes? I would like to hear more from you on that, if you can elaborate a little bit. And I have a second question that goes directly back to what you just said. The order of magnitude, from my understanding, is essential. If it's supposed to be fixed, you gotta know, at least have an idea of how, if it is a fix at all. So not putting a number out. I don't really understand your answer to that. Maybe you could explain it a little more as well. Thank you.
With regard to unintended consequences, when we use the holistic framework, all right, one of the essentials is we have what we call a holistic context, in which we have a context for the decision to use livestock, use technology, whatever. We put it through a filtering to see that it's socially, environmentally, economically sound, short and long term. And then we do something that's new. We always automatically assume we're wrong. And we say, on the assumption we're wrong, where will we get the earliest possible warning so that we don't keep repeating this? And we look at that socially, economically, and environmentally. And so on the projects I've shown you, we've been doing that all the time, and we're picking up nothing at all, economically, socially, or environmentally, from our earliest warning indicators. Okay, so we're constantly watching for that. The complexity of our environment is just mind-boggling. We don't have a scientist I know of in the world that understands what's happening in a cubic inch of soil. Okay, that's why we're stopping the arrogance and saying, let's assume we're wrong automatically and monitor on that basis. So that's what we're doing with that. And okay, so I think I've covered that. With regard to your other part was the methane again?
Yeah, the magnitude of
oh, the magnitude. Yes, we can bounce figures if you like. Right here, I can ask Seth or you, come on, start bouncing some figures.
Jim?
Jim.
When I first looked at this 5 years ago, he's talking about land on those ovals that you saw up there that exceeds 10 billion acres. Okay, 1 ton per carbon, 10 billion acres every year is more than we're burning in fossil fuels. Just thinking about it, and you say, well, how do you do that? Well, what we're learning is as biodiversity increases, it could be dung beetles, it could be earthworms, it could be a lot of things. Because the soils in the United States used to be 8, 10, 12 feet deep. Now, how much carbon was in those? Has each acre lost 50 tons, 100 tons? And now a lot of those are bare ground. So that's the opportunity. I don't think humans can do this, but with a lot of other species involved, I think we don't even know the opportunity here. But it's a huge number.
Yep.
Hi, Alan. Having studied the game ranching revolution in Southern Africa, it seems to me that...
Can you hold the mic up?
Yeah, it seems to me that with the numbers of game animals in South Africa increasing from maybe 500,000 to over 20 million in a couple of decades, that the holistic land management is as suitable for cattle, sheep, goats, as it is for wildlife, and the difference really is in market conditions or something, or culture. And I bring that up because I'm curious if in the United States there have been any interest by the bison community, because it seems to show great potential in the restoration of the Great Plains.
Yeah, we're working with some of the biggest bison producers in this country. They've been working with us for a long time to try to heal that land. It doesn't matter, from the grass and the soil's point of view, it doesn't matter what the animal. And this is the problem I struck when I believed, and I was working with American Fulbright scholars at the time, this was way back in the 60s, that if we could get rid of the livestock, we could do it with wildlife. Well, I found we couldn't, because of what's happening in the parks and everything. We've so interfered with the pack hunters, the predation, the freedom of movement, that we don't have a natural situation existing. So even if you go to the Serengeti with the big million wildebeest, etc., I was there recently, 12 days on horseback, riding, you know, with herds and so on, and everywhere I was looking at way over 50% bare soil. And they've had something like, I think, documented something like 60% decrease in their wildlife in the recent years. We've just got no option but to bring livestock in with them, as we're doing on our learning site in Africa.
We run them together.
Yeah, we run them together. We run our herd of cattle, sheep and goats. Okay, they are run on the same land with sable, zebra, giraffe, bushbuck, kudu, impala, reedbuck. I can go on and on. Plus lions, cheetahs, hyenas, wild dogs. We run them all together. And we could not do that with the wildlife alone. That's what I started out trying to do in the 50s, and I failed. But we can do it if we put them together. And there is no conflict. We have got our wildlife increasing now. The increase of summer has been phenomenal. I can sit typing on my computer in my mud hut and look at up to 60 head of game as I type in my mud hut now. And many of those are bushbuck, and 10 years ago we didn't even have them. Okay, this is all because we increased the livestock 400%. That's what's given it to us. So picture it like the wildlife on that land doing their thing, and us using this bulldozer that doesn't use diesel, doesn't pollute, but we can't park it, and this bulldozer is creating the habitat. So the fish, the geese, the ducks, everything is coming back, and there is no conflict. The planning process ensures no conflict.
Hi, my question actually has a lot to do with the previous question. You kind of answered some of my thoughts, but I was wondering, I'm trying to picture how this would play out in the western United States, and the conflict, trying to convince a rancher to allow wildlife to go roam freely on his land with bison or whatever kind of livestock he or she has. How have you addressed that in the past, kind of people's perceptions of what their past experiences? How do you convince people that this would work, I guess?
Yeah, there's going to be a problem here, and it's all of us. Okay, we can't point fingers at any group. So the ranchers, their culture is being destroyed. They're in a defensive mode. Okay, they're against the wolf, but that's ignorance, like all of us were, including me. And all we've got to do is get a public opinion change, and then things will change. But until public opinion changes, you will not see a change in the cattlemen's organizations, the environmental organizations, any of them. And if you read how new knowledge gets into societies, and one of the best studies of that I've seen is Lord Ashby, Eric Ashby, the British scientist. He looked at Britain and America as his case study over the last 200 years. And how do you get new knowledge into our societies, democratic societies? And what he found is facts, data, evidence, logic does not do it. It does not do it. The only thing that brings it about is public opinion change. When the public opinion changes, then the ranching organizations will change, the big bingos, the big NGOs will change, etc. Thankfully, some of the big NGOs are beginning to collaborate with us, work with us. Now, that's wonderful. Ranching organizations are not working with us yet. Individual ranchers are. Same as universities. No university is working with us. Courageous professors within universities are working with us. And this is the way society goes. Until public opinion changes, please believe me, you're not going to save the land, you're not going to save the wildlife. We're all going to go on doing what we're doing.
We'll go to the back, right by the pillar. We'll do both.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Are you aware of the work of Dr. Michael Benelli? Do you know who he is? He's got Wadi Atir. I think it's the first sustainability laboratory that I know of on Earth. It's if you Google it, Wadi Atir is there. And of course, there are sheep involved. He's working with the Bedouin. I think it's a really good example of what could be done here. I mean, there needs to be that same sort of initiative here, which actually, it dovetails into what you've been talking about. So I wanted to mention, he was also a student of Bucky Fuller's. And to me, Bucky Fuller is kind of the, at least one of the fathers of sustainability. I'm a long-time disciple of his, and so I wanted to bring up Dr. Michael Benelli because what he's doing is of great interest, and it's successful. And he's there with the Bedouin, and you know, they're growing medicinal plants. They're in the middle of the desert. The Israeli Interior Department allowed him to do what he's doing. So I think that's a great sort of powerful example of what can be done. So I wanted to mention that. I wonder what you know about it.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, I did meet Michael through Buckminster Fuller Award when we got it, and I visited the site with him when I was in the Negev. Okay, and they are growing the herbs, and they've got a nice piece of land on the edge. It was he who organized the dinner that I mentioned with the Bedouins that I had. Okay, so yes, it's wonderful what they're doing with the herbs, etc. But please, that word successful, the desertification is not going to stop until we can change the attitude in Israel to the livestock. That's why I was there talking with them, and we were having that Bedouin dinner. The land is still turning to desert, I'm afraid. But what he's doing is great, and I'm trying to give him what support we can.
Go ahead.
Thank you. My question is regarding the adaptation of the model to different latitudes and kinds of soils and climates, because I suppose that it's not the same doing in one side than in the other. So how do you adapt that, and in order to be successful, the more successful that you can, how do you deal with that?
Fortunately, that's very easy. When we were developing this, okay, we began in the parts of Africa that I was working in, and then because of force of circumstance, our long civil war, me being forced out of the country, etc., I began to work in Paraguay and North America, South America, etc. So what you see here, the planning process that we work with, was developed in everything from the true deserts, like the Namib, where there's no rain, to the Alto Paraná on the Paraguay-Brazilian border, where you have over 100 inches of rain. And it's totally applicable without any change right across. Same planning process works identically right across because ecological principles do not change. And we're just using economic, social, ecological principles that don't change in country or anywhere. But we have, over the years, had tremendous resistance where people say, oh, that'll work in Texas, it won't work in Nebraska. That'll work in Africa, it won't work here. It works everywhere. So we're doing it in Denmark, in Europe, in Africa, everywhere. And it's exactly the same decision process, exactly the same planning process. The detail comes out different in each case, but the same principles. Thankfully, that problem became easy.
Go across the back.
Just a quick kind of small bore question. I may be missing something, but when you showed us those pictures of the hardpan, the complete desert with very, very little growing on it, can you just explain to me how you can take a herd of cattle, sheep, goats, and introduce them onto that land where it appears they have nothing to eat? What happens the first week, the first month? Can you just give us a little time-lapse photography of that?
This one always comes up. It always comes up. People cannot understand how we began, as I said, when I offered a £5 note in a 100-mile drive, if somebody could show me a single plant, and I trebled the stocking rate first year. People say, how did you do that? No magic. You all went to college. Didn't you all learn that every biological function is a sigmoid curve? Every biological function is a sigmoid curve. I just used that. That's all I used. You all learned that. So what do I mean by that? Let's say we had this room and it's 10,000 acres or whatever. And let's say it's got a few animals, so there's a bunch of people here. That's all this can support on twigs, leaf fall from the trees, browsing shrubs that are there. There's no grass. It's all hard capped ground. Okay, but it can hold these few people for 365 days. And it's pathetically few animals. But that's what it can support. Okay, so if I take this room and I divide it in half, could it support those people for 180 days here? Yes. What does that let these plants do? Grow. So if I divide the room in quarter, could it support those few people in quarter of the room for 90 days? Yes, of course it could. What's that let those plants on the rest of the land do? It gives them 270 days on which they can grow. Sigmoid curve. You just let the plants get up the curve. So all I did was go to treble the stocking rate on 1/30th of the land for 1 to 2 days. That's all I did. And we just grew grass. On a daily basis, we'd gone to 900% increase in stocking rate. But the grass grew. You saw the pictures of it, and those are not faked with Photoshop, please believe me. Just use the sigmoid curve.
Hi, my question has two parts, please. There's a lot of water being moved behind this story when I look at livestock in East Africa, at least. The extent of fuel expenditure for pumping water up from boreholes and so forth can add up. I wondered if you could address that. And that leads me to the second part, which is you discount the game ranching, which I was very curious, knowing some of your background in this history of the game ranching. And I would have thought that from a water standpoint alone, that would be a very strong case for game on the same acreage. And linked to that, the same productivity or greater productivity on the hoof, and also in terms of soil compaction. I realize livestock, as we know, would tend to compact much further down into the soil profile than a lot of the wildlife species such as Sam McNaughton and Joy Belsky have identified. So I'm wondering if you could address some of those ecological principles, comparing what your experience with game ranching has shown compared to livestock ranching in arid lands, please.
We are working in those arid lands, including in northern Kenya, where we've got one of your graduates of Tufts who's trained for 2 years with me. She's doing some wonderful work there. Okay, so we're already doing that now. What people are doing is they're setting aside areas for the game, okay, and then trying to run the livestock on the rest. As we get them to understand better, we're saying, no, do what we're doing in Zimbabwe, just run the whole lot together, because they complement each other. The livestock, there are only 3 things that livestock do, or game, okay? You don't need to research it. Like, you don't have to research that water flows downhill. It's common sense. Okay, so the 3 things we're using with livestock are these: that their hooves and the weight of the animal on the hoof, okay, breaks and chips capped surfaces. You don't have to research that. People have been tracking animals for over 10,000 years because of that. So we use the hooves of the animals and the behavior in the herd to break the surfaces. Range science, they developed machines to do that, Dixon imprinter. So they accept that you need that. The animal can do it. That's one thing. Second thing the animal does is when you've got that massive grass, they take it and convert it to a lesser bulk of broken down material covering the soil. You've only got to watch a cow dung to know that. And the third thing we use is the animal hooves because of the weight of the animal, whether it's a giraffe, an elephant, a duiker, or a cow, or a buffalo. The weight of that animal on 4 small hooves compresses the ground, compacts the ground. And that's, you need a certain amount of compaction, seed to soil compaction, for good germination of seed. That is why farmers, when they plant seed, will put a roller over it. It's to get a certain amount of compaction. So you've only got to get a horse stand on your toe, and you know that. Okay, those are the only three things we use. They don't need proving, they don't need anything. And we use that now in the planning process to say, how can we bring this about? How much is coming about from the zebra, the buffalo, whatever other animals? Is it enough to do the job? If not, let's use the cattle. So on our land, if you can picture it, we know months ahead where the cattle are planned to go on that chart. And then if we find that the elephants have come in and done it, or the buffalo have done it adequately, we just adjust the plan and we don't use the cattle. So we just complement them, because most of the time the game is not doing it adequately now because we've decimated the predators. The moment you get rid of that fear of pack hunting predators, the behavior of the game changes. Does it answer your question?
Yes, I'm still puzzled about the cost of moving all the water.
Oh, the water part of it. Well, we're working with everything from people believing that cattle, livestock, let me use cattle, but I mean livestock, okay, that cattle need to water every day. Okay, but what I observe working around the world is I observe pastoralists and people watering their cattle every fourth day, watering them every second day. I came across one situation where I have no reason to doubt the person who absolutely assured me the cattle herd I was looking at hadn't had any water for 7 years. But they were getting enough moisture from the vegetation in that situation. He said when they cut them open, the bladder is very shrunken. Okay? So we're using everything like that from Madagascar, which is going to be your next Haiti, please believe me, if we can't be effective. There, people that used to water their cattle, okay, 15 meters from where I was meeting with headmen and senior family members, they are now not watering. They are burning prickly pear and chopping prickly pear to give them enough water. Now, we've just got to have a chicken or the egg situation till we can get that water back. But really, the belief that cattle have to have water every day is a belief. And we're dealing with all of these different things, from people walking 10 miles to water, to people believing they have to water within a mile. We're just learning as we go.
Okay, I'm going to take two more. We're already over time. So,
I'd be interested in your thoughts on biochar, and if you ever looked at that as a possible resolve.
Yes, I think it's a great scheme. And in fact, we're working with some of the biochar people in Denmark, okay, and they're also finalists in the VEC, the Virgin Earth thing, with us. But my remarks applied that I said here. Biochar is a great technique. Okay, I'm not knocking it at all. And what I would do in an ideal world is be managing holistically, dealing with this problem through the livestock, and then in certain circumstances where the biochar is socially, environmentally, economically the right thing to do, as we can work out with the framework we use, then I'd be using it. And where it wasn't appropriate, I wouldn't be using it. It is not appropriate for everywhere. That I can tell you now. But it's a great technique.
Great. Last question.
Hi, thank you, Alan. How can I, living in Somerville, make a difference? And first off, like, how am I even responsible for desertification? And how can I walk out of here and feel that I'm not a problem and what I can do in my community? Thank you.
Thank you for ending on that. I couldn't have orchestrated it better. What I said to you earlier about public opinion changing, okay? In the years that I've talked of, the 60 years I've been working on this, okay, I have struck incredible obstacles. I don't want to bore you with going through it all, but nothing has changed since Galileo. The medical guy that discovered you had to wash your hands between the cadavers and the woman in the birthing ward, you know, ended as a pauper, destroyed. That's happened to me. It's not personal. It's happened to every scientist in the history of the world who's come up with paradigm-shifting ideas. Okay? And in the years that it was been happening to me, I've been trying to understand why. What is it? Why? How do we get new knowledge? What produces change, leadership? Where does it come from? And in the situation we face in the world today, let me assure you from all that I know of many years of struggling with this and swimming upstream, okay, that there is nobody at the helm. There is no leader. There is nobody going to lead you out of this. And the leadership absolutely cannot come from any institution. It cannot come from a government, an international agency, a big NGO, a university. The leadership cannot come from an institution. The research shows you that, because institutions are almost immune to new knowledge. The research shows you that it can take anywhere up to 200 years to get new knowledge into an institution. Okay? We've known for 60 years that overgrazing's got nothing to do with animal numbers. Please name the universities in the world teaching that 60 years later. Never refuted, published in 5 major languages. There's not a single, I've read hundreds of dissertations on overgrazing, not one ever produced any evidence at all linking overgrazing to animal numbers. Wazan was published in 5 major languages, picked up by independent scientists in Cuba, Brazil, New Zealand, Rhodesia. Name a university teaching that today. That's 60 years after. And thousands of people are dying. It took the Royal Navy 200 years to accept that lime juice would stop scurvy, led by brilliant men, with that being a crucial problem to Britain's survival. It took the Merchant Navy, led by brilliant men, a further 70 years. The research is all there, so you're not going to get leadership from any institution. You're only going to get it from individuals. That's why I put up Margaret Mead's statement here. You are the leaders. You are. So if you want to go out of here and you want a better world, you start leading. You start getting involved. And don't say, I'm too nervous, I don't like public speaking, I'm not going to do anything. You need to do it. Because every time I point a finger at someone else, there's 3 pointing back at me. You start yourself. If you care for the future, I'm in the departure lounge. I'm approaching 80. I'm in the departure lounge, or damn close. It's your future, most of you in this room. So get involved, get involved, get involved in whatever way you can. We, I mentioned, are starting up to 100 hubs around the world. We've got people already in Turkey, Denmark, UK, Chile, Argentina, and we'll talk about that more with some of you. And we've got Trey here who's doing that work. Get involved if you care about the future. No matter how small your part, start playing a part. I have stood before you today talking to you. I'm a shy person, I'm going to confess. The first time I even had to talk to a small meeting, I peed my pants. I had to hold a briefcase in front of me because my bloody pants were. If I can do that and stand before you and do it around the world and get people moving, God damn it, you can.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Allan.
you.
What a pleasure to be here.